The market up over 8 points today. What do you make of this performance?
I think there's generally just a lot of bullishness about the performance, performance of listed companies, moving, of course, into the final quarter of the year, and of course, with a few companies expected to announce their results. So I think it's just there's an all-round air of optimism about the future direction.
All right, let's talk about some of the drivers in the market today. There were companies like EGADS, Unga, Express, Mumias. What's going on?
Pretty much improved sentiments, yeah, particularly for those companies in the agricultural sector or related industries for that matter, such as Unga. And of course, with reports coming out about, expected growth of agriculture and related industries, then, there's a lot of optimism coming to the market.
All right, Kenyan Cobalt was a stock to watch in recent weeks, and that was largely over a dispute with the regulator over refinery at the Mombasa refinery for oil. Apparently, the company has resolved some issues with stakeholders. I don't know whether that means the regulator. How's that impacted on the stock?
Very, very well, apparently. Investors have gained a lot of confidence in the light of, the back and forth of not very pleasing information that was playing out in the media recently. But I think since the information came out, or rather the announcement that, they had resolved that issue, the price has just started going up. And I think by now we closed at around 17% higher than its previous low, somewhere around mid-month. So I think there's going to be a lot of interest in the shares, and for good reason as well.
All right, just moving over to industrial stocks, let's talk about Athi River, which also gained a lot of attention today and saw a lot of movements and closed upwards today.
Yeah, I think that probably says something about, cement consumption moving forward, especially looking at the role that building and construction industry is expected to play in the economic recovery. Second to that is also one of the other areas, which is fertilizer. And I think looking at the expansion into the East African market, particularly in Tanzania, and looking at prospects of agriculture locally, I think that's generally expected to factor into their earnings moving forward.
Also attracting some attention today was the Scan Group, lucrative advertiser in the region. And this is on the back of cross listings by companies like the Nation Media Group. What's going on in the media and advertising space?
Again, a lot of hope about pick-up or build-up in advertising expenditure. Again, we've also seen recently, the mobile wars playing out currently, the price wars, so to speak, have also generated a lot of activity by way of advertising and PR activity and that kind of thing, which basically is Scan Group's key areas.
All right, let's talk about some of the stocks that felt some pressure. Today, continuing is KPLC, continuing trading downwards, and that's despite the release of very good first half earnings. Why is it that investors are holding back?
Perhaps profit taking in the run-up to the announcement of their results, which were definitely very, very impressive. The price had actually moved up quite a bit, and I think there are some investors who probably feel it's time to take a pause, take their money out, and such. Decide whether to go back in or start looking for other counters. But generally, looking at their fundamentals again, very, very perfect shape, right. Very good position in terms of potential of electricity in the country. Right. And so we should expect their price to stabilize and probably move upwards, especially on the other fact because most of their shares are held by institutional investors.
All right, obviously electricity and utilities under the spotlight in Africa because that's really where we're seeing the biggest infrastructure drive. But what we're seeing from KPLC is converting government shares into ordinary shares. Who's likely to take up the government shareholding?
It's still early to say, given that there hasn't been any public information to that end, but it is widely expected that given the prospects, or rather the attractiveness of the company moving forward, and especially looking at their current fundamentals, there should be quite an interest from strategic institutional investors, or strategic investors for that matter, perhaps even local. So there's an indication that there might be no loss of takers as far as the shares are concerned once the government decides to exit.
One of the drivers of the markets today was Mumia Sugar. Early in today's session, we saw the stock under a bit of pressure, but eventually it closed upwards marginally by about 1.71%. Now, we know that they're doing groundbreaking work in terms of biofuels. We also know that they're a significant player within the manufacturing sector, especially in agriculture. Just talk to us about Mumias.
Mumias, I think, is another company to watch, that the share price is definitely going to continue trending upwards. Again, on the back of a very promising information about their plans to diversify, like you mentioned, biofuels. Also, I think ethanol. And other areas, I think, including bottled water, not counting also that they are key players also in selling electricity to the national grid. And when you look at all these other additional sources of income in addition to their core business of sugar, you're pretty much looking at a company that's likely to go places in the years ahead.
Okay, let's move away from equities finally and look at the fixed income market. Just in general, we've seen the volumes of bonds increase by about 476% since January this year. And wherever there's been risk aversion regarding buying into companies, people have moved into government securities. Just your outlook for the bond market going forward and whether or not this rally can be sustained?
By and large, I think it can be sustained. I think when we look at the activity on the bond side, probably a lot of it has to do with also asset allocation issues, in the sense that most of the institutional investors might not have a lot of leeway as far as equities are concerned. And again, when you look at the yields that the market has been giving, let's say in the last 1 year or so, very, very attractive, again with the potential of very good capital gains. And of course, the issue of being the government of Kenya, there's a very, very low risk. So I think bonds are definitely going to continue being attractive, again, bearing in mind that there's still a lot of liquidity in the market, and that is expected to play down the road as new issues come forth. So I think in the absence of any big activities taking place on the equity side, the bond market should continue being vibrant.